So it's April 15th, and as of a few minutes ago, I have officially canceled my April 23rd MCAT date. So, yeah. Midnight tonight was the deadline, so that is done. And I will not be taking the MCAT in 8 days. And I will not be submitting scores by the June 1st application date. Mixed bag of feelings. So here I am in the MCAT registration waiting room for the third time this year. I guess not technically this calendar year, but in a year. Third time in a year. So it's got me a little panicked because there was a lot of people ahead of me in line. So we're just gonna cross our fingers and hope that they were in different parts of the country than me. So you can probably tell by the title of this video what I'm going to be talking about today, but it's a really hard video for me to film. I've always tried to be as real as possible with you all though, because if there's something I'm going through, I'm not the only one, and I know that, and I want you to know that. And so I'm going to talk about why I pushed my MCAT back. And I have no script or anything for this video, so we're just going to have a heart-to-heart for a minute. So this cycle, I originally scheduled my MCAT for the end of January 20 something, and realized that doing all of my studying in the fall semester when I was adjusting to a new program and also trying to apply for jobs and you name it, everything else, and then also taking my MCAT a few weeks after the holiday break, and I was going to be, traveling for the holidays, as you all saw. And it's really hard to study in that type of environment, particularly the type of studying that you need to be doing within the month leading up to your MCAT. So I pushed it back to April and was like, all right, I feel good in my program now, have a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like. I am choosing, to only have 2 classes at a time to lighten my load so that I can study for MCAT. And that was all going really great. And I was studying more consistently than I ever really had been, even in the fall. And so then I had to go home, home meaning like to my parents where I grew up, for personal reasons. And a lot of other personal things came up while I was there, and it was just a lot of things all at once. And that was, I think, sort of towards the end of March. So again, I had about a month until my MCAT on April 23rd. And it just didn't feel like it was gonna happen. It didn't feel like, when I say it meaning me studying and being prepared enough to the caliber that I wanted and feel like I need to be. I have no idea what the people upstairs from me are doing right now, but they're making a lot of noise and ruckus, so sorry if you can hear that. But so I did some soul searching and thought about it and cried about it, probably. I don't particularly remember, but probably. And decided to push my MCAT back again. The only problem was that this time it was going to have to be till after I wanted it to be. It was going to have to be after I wasn't gonna have scores on the day that you can hit submit on AMCAS if I pushed my MCAT back. April 23rd was kind of one of the last-ish types of dates, maybe a couple in the beginning of May, but it takes you a month to get your scores back, and you can hit submit on AMCAS at the end of May. So I wasn't gonna have scores back, and it's not the biggest deal. They don't transmit applications to medical schools until sometime in June, like mid to late June. And so if I could get a date in May, that would still be fine. Any of you applying this cycle or last probably know that there are a lot of applicants these last few cycles. I'm pretty sure more than ever before. And that's a great thing, and that's an amazing thing. We need doctors, particularly primary care doctors, in the world. And, I'm sure that people seeing COVID and seeing everything happen with the pandemic wanted to feel like they could help. They wanted to help people. They saw going to medical school and becoming a doctor, becoming a physician as the way to do that. So applications increased. So MCAT spots filled up. And so there was no free exam dates in May. Not near where I live now, not near where my parents live. I even looked at test site locations across the country where I know I have friends that live there, thinking that maybe I could go stay with them, take my MCAT, come back. That's obviously a very non-ideal situation because the stress of travel and being in an unfamiliar place and all of that isn't great for an already stressful test day. So I put myself on the wait list for a May 20 test date, and the one opening that I got was for a test center back home in Florida. And by the time that I got the email and went to the website to try to take that spot, or at least see if I could, it was already taken, which was maximum 5 minutes. So there's a lot of spots filled up for MCAT dates. So I talked with my pre-health advisor at my undergrad, and she's super great and still to this day advises me, even though I have been to 2 other institutions now. But talk to her about basically what happens if I wait for the 3rd section of tests to open, because the AMC opened up the first 3 months or 4 months of the year worth of tests in one go. Then they opened up the next 3 or 4 months worth of tests, and then they were going to, but hadn't yet opened up the last third of the test dates that will take us through the end of the year, or through September. And so I asked her, how bad is it to take my MCAT in mid-July? Because that was the earliest date that I could take it. Basically just going through the normal registration process, not doing a reschedule, but canceling my April date, waiting for the July dates to open, and then registering for those like you would normally. And she told me that it's not great and it's not good, but it's fine. And if I felt strongly about the rest of my application, that it would be fine, that it would not be super worrisome for her as a pre-health advisor trying to get me and others into medical school. She said that she starts to get a little bit more worried with August and September test dates, just because by the time you get scores back from those a month after you've taken it, the schools have already started sending out interviews and you're behind as far as filling out secondaries. And so, but that July, receiving my scores then in August, is still towards the beginning of the process and should be fine. I'm sure many of you watching this aren't the type of students who feel good about fine. So it was a really tough decision, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to study at the level that I wanted to study for and be ready for the April test date the way that things were. And so I made the choice of a good late score over a potentially not good on-time score. And if you've watched any of my other videos talking about MCAT or med school, you know that I have taken the MCAT once before. I took it what now is way back in the second to last year of undergrad. I don't know. I took it over 3 years ago, so it's expired. Those scores are expired. Those scores were fine. There's that word again, fine. But they weren't where I wanted them to. I had kind of always anticipated retaking it, and then my scores expiring just sort of gave me the extra to do that. So as a second round test taker, regardless of the score expiration and all of that, I feel probably much more pressure than I should, as many of us do. But I feel the need to perform definitely better than my first test. And obviously everyone wants a really great score. But I put an immense amount of pressure on myself to feel like I need a great score, because I've already taken the MCAT and because my undergrad GPA isn't perfect, and A, B, C, X, Y, Z, all of these reasons that we tell ourselves that we might not be good enough to get into medical school. And so the moral of the story here is, yes, I rescheduled my MCAT, but no, I shouldn't feel the level of upset and down on myself and disappointed in myself and judgment towards myself as I do for doing that. And you all shouldn't either. And they always say, you know, you should treat yourself the way you would treat your best friend. And I would tell my best friend that it was all fine. And that she's amazing and that she can do anything she sets her mind to. And that it'll all work out. So that is my message to not only you all, but to me. And to those of you who aren't or haven't been involved in the med school application process or the MCAT taking process, you're probably watching this video thinking this is very, very dramatic for me talking about pushing my test back. And you'd probably be right, but it is a completely normal and appropriate response to the amount of pressure that the medical school institution puts on us, as well as just academia in general. So that pressure is there, but we all got it, and we're gonna do the damn thing. And I believe in you all. So if you had to reschedule your MCAT, if you're watching this video years from now and you are submitting a late MCAT score, just know, do the best you can and it'll all work out. I will leave you on one last note of logistic advice, and that is if you are hitting submit on your application before you know what your scores are, you might not want to put in all of the schools that you want to apply to. The reason being that if you don't get the score you wanted, if you get potentially what you view as a bad score, anyone who survives the MCAT has a good score in my mind. But what you might view as, you know, not a competitive score or whatever you want to call it, and you decide you don't want to go through, you don't think that you'll get into some of the schools that you want to apply to, if you hit submit on that before you knew what your MCAT scores were, and you need to reapply the next year, you're considered a reapplicant at those schools. So the reapplicant status, from my understanding, goes school by school. So if you have to hit submit on your application, even if you just have one school listed, AMCAS will, and NACOMAS will verify your application, your transcripts, your letters, all that kind of stuff. They'll verify it all and get it ready to be sent to the med schools as soon as they have your MCAT score. But once you've listed those med schools, you might be a reapplicant at those schools if you end up having to reapply again. So the consideration to think about is to just strategy-wise, potentially not put as many schools as you might want to until you're sure of what your scores are. And if you get your scores back in, they're amazing, then you can add all the schools that you want to apply to later. So I will leave you on that logistical note, and good luck to everyone. I am sending all my love to you. If you are applying this cycle, we're in this together, collaboration over competition, and one day we will all be calling each other doctor. See you next time.